Calls it a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno. Matt, it's good to be back with you. I was gone for Thanksgiving 1 week. I caught what was the flu that I think turned into pneumonia for a few days and had to skip the next Sunday. So it feels weird to me having been gone 2 Sundays. You held it down phenomenally as expected, but it's good to be back with you.
I appreciate the kind words, but yes, I'm definitely happy to cede the hosting chair right back to you, just because there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you guys will get to see with needing to click here, click there with StreamYard. Jeff has it down much better than I do. So yeah, this is going to be another fun show for everybody.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody joining us live on YouTube, on Facebook. A lot of familiar names and faces we appreciate. And yes, I am alive, BMR, to answer your questions. It felt like day 3 of a fever. You question whether or not you're still alive, but we're here. And, you know, while there hasn't been necessarily a ton of Dodgers news, there are rumors. And I keep saying, Matt, it's great to be covering the Dodgers. Imagine if you were like covering the Rockies right now. Like, not only is nothing happening in the baseball world, like, have the Rockies been connected to anybody? Are there any rumors in the Rockies world? So at least we've got Ohtani and Yamamoto, among others. It's good. It's just a helpful reminder, Matt, how fortunate we are to be covering this team.
Yeah, there's definitely a balance to that of like, okay, you know, the offseason can get quiet quickly, and then we are, you know, looking at things to discuss, not only on this show, but to write about. And that becomes a little stressful. But we also are, and we're getting to the point of teetering where it's been like, okay, enough of like speculation. Let's get something substantial. Let's get, you know, some deals done. And for the Dodgers, you know, I know we're going to get into a lot of the different possibilities. They also basically have a pretty full 40-man roster. And so there's going to be a lot of things happening, even on top of, you know, potential signings and trades.
Yeah, there's big moves to come for sure. There's also going to be a lot of smaller moves as well. So here's the plan for tonight. We're going to start with some real news. The Dodgers actually have done something since the last time we spoke. They brought back Joe Kelly. Jason Hayward re-signed earlier in the week. We covered that. We're going to talk Joe Kelly, who is reportedly back. Not official yet, but that's probably because of the 40-man roster crunch that you mentioned. Then we're going to talk rumors, a ton to get to. There's Ohtani news. There's Yamamoto news. There's a potential Joc Pederson reunion, Seth Lugo on the pitching side. We'll get through all of that. And then we're going to talk winter meetings, technically beginning tonight on Sunday. We're going to talk through Andrew Friedman, some interesting quotes he said he had ahead of the winter meetings. And then one of my favorite segments we do each year, Matt, we're going to make some predictions. You would think we would have had to make some offseason predictions like a month ago when the season ended. But hey, in baseball, nothing happens. So here we are in December making some predictions for the winter meetings and beyond. Do the Dodgers get Ohtani, Yamamoto? Do they make some trades? All that and more. We'll end with some questions and a Matthew Moreno Chick-fil-A food opinion that I cannot wait to get into. But we've got to hold ourselves there. Let's talk with the real news. The reports, Matt, that Dodgers re-sign reliever Joe Kelly. Initially, Fabian Ardaya, who I believe ceded credit to Robert Murray, but Fabian Ardaya reported it was a 3-year contract. I believe that was a typo. We think it's going to be a 1-year deal, but just immediate reaction to the Dodgers reportedly coming to terms with reliever Joe Kelly.
Oh, man, a little bit of surprise and a little bit of, oh, that makes sense, just because obviously Joe Kelly is from, you know, the Southern California area, still lives here. He enjoys pitching for the team. The fans have embraced him. And so it made sense in that point and from that standpoint. But like you and I, when we were kind of preparing for tonight's show, looking through the bullpen, the Dodgers now find themselves in a bit of an interesting situation. And so there was both sides of me. Like I said, some surprise, some of like, okay, yeah, I expected him to be back.
Yeah, I remember when we talked through the qualifying offer decisions, team option decisions, Joe Kelly was one of the team options they had to decide on. And my prediction was exactly this. They would decline the team option and that he would come back. I feel like there's a comfort level there. I think Joe Kelly has gone other places and failed and then come back to LA multiple times and been much better here. So I think he knows that this is the right place for him. I think the Dodgers trust him. They trust him in big spots. They trust him in the postseason. They trust him in scenarios where they need him to get, you know, 1 out in a jam or 5 or 6 outs even. Looking at the numbers, he's 35 now. He will be 36 midway through next season. So that's not a small number. And yet The velocity last year was basically a career high, over 99 miles an hour. It ticked up when he came to LA. 1.74 ERA in 10 innings for the Dodgers. His last 2 years with Los Angeles were both good seasons from an ERA perspective. Of course, one of those was shortened by injury, and that's kind of my biggest concern, Matt, with Kelly. He hasn't thrown more than 51 innings since 2018. It's a guy who's perpetually injured. When he's healthy and with the Dodgers, he has been effective, even if he was ineffective with the White Sox last year. But when he's healthy, he has been good. The issue for me, besides age and besides health, is what you mentioned. I was like, hey, good, Joe Kelly's back. And then I went and did the math on bullpen. So you get 8 relievers, basically. 5 starters, 8 relievers make up your 13-man pitching staff. Here are guys that the Dodgers have under contract next year. Yency Almonte is back. Caleb Ferguson, JP Fireeisen, who was really, really good before getting hurt. So he's not a type that's going to be like on the Phil Bickford role. He's believed to be a guy who's going to be back end of the bullpen type stuff. Gratterall, Phillips, Trinan, Joe Kelly, Vanasco, who they signed to a major league deal. That's 8 already. That does not include Ryan Yarbrough, who knows what his role is going to be, but he has no option years remaining. That does not include Alex Vesia, who can be optioned. It doesn't include a young guy like Kyle Hurt, who many people believe might be a future back end of the bullpen type guy. It does not include Michael Grove, Victor Gonzalez, who is out of options. So with Joe Kelly here, the bullpen feels already overcrowded, which when I do the math on that, I guess my biggest surprise, Matt, is that if the Dodgers kind of had one move to make in the bullpen, I'm a little surprised it was Joe Kelly and not Ryan Brazier or somebody like that.
Yeah, so part of me believes that there's definitely going to be some movement, whether it's DFAing guys or looking to include some of maybe a Victor Gonzalez type as part of a trade. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to belittle him or demean like his value, but like be kind of a throw-in piece, right? Not necessarily
there's no options,
right? Not necessarily a primary prospect, maybe going in a deal. The Yarbrough one, I know a lot of people were speculating, is he a non-tender candidate? And I guess when you look at the bullpen crunch, like maybe, but I think he also provided them with enough versatility and value that way that I didn't see them going that route. And so they didn't. They did tender him a contract. And so at least for now, he's going to be part of the roster. But yeah, I think we're going to look at, because I don't necessarily imagine that they're done with the bullpen. I would be shocked if there isn't interest in bringing, one of Ryan Brazier or Shelby Miller back. If you have to pick between the two, I think you go Brazier. But yeah, that's going to be interesting, and kind of circle it back to Joe Kelly. Like you said, health is definitely a concern. And especially this year, he was on the IL 3 different times. And the last time with the Dodgers was because of I think it was either forearm, elbow. So sometimes it tends to be both. So it's just a matter of what the Dodgers sort of technically designate his IL stint as. But he missed a month basically from, middle of August, I think it was, to middle of September. So there are some health concerns. The flip side is, we're discussing all this depth the Dodgers have in the bullpen. So, I mean, it could be, we've seen them take this approach with a lot of players of like, hey, like, okay, you're injured, like recover for 2 months. We're fine. Like we need you for October. And so obviously the preference is for Joe Kelly to stay healthy. But if he does run into any more elbow trouble or stuff like that, the Dodgers appear to be in a position where they could just say, hey, like, take your time, just get back at some point in the season.
Yeah, to your point, if Kelly has truly signed, we're talking about 9 guys who have basically signed major league contracts or are back end of the bullpen guys. I mean, Yency Almonte just signed a $1.9 million contract and has no options remaining. So he's in the major league bullpen. Caleb Ferguson is the only lefty that I currently have in the bullpen. So he's definitely there. JP Fireeisen, again, has options. So he's maybe a candidate to be sent down, but he was one of the better relievers in baseball before they traded for him, and then took him a full year to recover, which they kind of knew, but it tells you how highly they thought of him prior. Gratterall has options. He's not going to get sent down. Evan Phillips is the closer. Blake Trinan just signed a major league deal. Vanasco signed a major league deal. Joe Kelly signed a major league deal. Ryan Yarbrough signed a major league deal. That's already 9, and again, that's only 1 lefty in the entire bullpen. I guess 2 if you count Yarbrough, but that's my point. Like, it makes sense when people are like, hey, I hope they go sign Brazier. But when you just do the math and you look, it's like, whose spot is he taking? Because Victor Gonzalez, Michael Grove, like those aren't Alex Vesia even. Those aren't guys included in the 9, and they can really only hold 8. And so the Vanasco move looks even more confusing to me now. He signed a major league deal. I believe that means he can't be optioned unless I'm missing something dramatic there.
I think he still has one option year left. What the
Okay.
difference for him is because he signed a major league deal, he was added to the 40-man roster.
Got it. Okay.
Whereas had he been re-signed on a minor league deal, he obviously wouldn't have been added to the 40-man unless they called him up at some point.
Okay. Well, that would make sense. So then if you plug Yarbrough in instead of Vanasco, Almonte, Ferguson, Fireisen, Gratterall, Phillips, Trinan, Kelly, and Yarbrough. I mean, there's 8. And again, if they go out and sign Ryan Brazier, I don't know who of those 8, potentially comes off of that list. So it's interesting.
Yeah, and I saw a question in here, Deuce, or not a question, a comment. Maybe we're going, oh, no starters on the staff, 14 relievers. No, there was something, I thought somebody else was saying maybe they go with 14 pitchers. Maybe I misread it, but just another reminder, like Jeff said when we kind of started this discussion, MLB roster rules, the Dodgers can only have 13 pitchers until you get to September. Then you're allowed to have one more. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting. And hey, like you mentioned in the opening, it's kind of another reason to keep track of the Dodgers because there clearly are some dominoes that need to fall.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, I would look at that, and I will say this: I think that bullpen's actually pretty good. Like if you tell me Evan Phillips is the back end of your bullpen, you've got a version of Trinan that apparently they're comfortable enough to re-sign. Fireisen coming back, Gratterall coming off the season he just came off of, Joe Kelly, Caleb Ferguson. I mean, that's a good group. I've said all along, I'm buying Yency Almonte's stock. Like, I think the Dodgers can get him back to where he needs to. And then you've got Ryan Yarbrough kind of as another lefty and eat up inning swingman. Like, that's a pretty good bullpen. And remember, this is one of the best bullpens in all of Major League Baseball at the end of last year. Yes, Brazier is gone. Shelby Miller is gone. You're replacing those guys with Blake Trinan and JP Fireisen. That's a pretty good, swap out. So, while it feels like more guys have left than have come back, I do think as we currently sit here, Matt, I actually feel pretty good about the Dodgers bullpen.
Yeah, I agree. I was open pretty much all throughout this past season on, the bullpen got off to a terrible start and
terrible.
It got to the point where, I basically said, hey, like at what point do we need to sort of start maybe worrying that the past 4 or 5 months are going to be just who they are for the rest of this year. But like you mentioned, to their credit, they did turn things around by the end of the season. And so, yeah, there is reason to be optimistic. Yency Almonte, he's somebody who was more inconsistent than he really has been with the Dodgers. Yeah. And so if he kind of gets back to his first season with the team, then that's a boost for the bullpen moving forward. Blake Trinan, I think, is obviously a big wild card. If he A is healthy and if B is, anything close to the pitcher he once was, like that's another, back end reliever that you can pair with Evan Phillips and figure out, who's your closer, who's your fireman. And so the pieces are definitely there. I think we just need to see kind of how it all comes together.
Yeah, I believe the stat was from July 1st on, the Dodgers bullpen was not only the best in baseball, it was like a half run better than everybody else. One other note, Brandon Gomes, Dodgers GM, did speak recently and said that both Fireisen and Blake Trinan are experiencing, quote, normal off seasons. So that sounds like they're expecting both of those guys to be ready. They obviously played it very cautiously as the season wore on with both of those guys not bringing them back. So the hope is that, hey, just rest, recover, have a normal offseason, be ready to go in the spring, and we'll see how that one plays out. So there you go. Joe Kelly back with the Dodgers. Let's move on now to some rumors, and we'll start with the big name, Matt. Shohei Ohtani, Jeff Passan, dropping a typical Jeff Passan bomb on Friday with a huge article. Included in there is that the Dodgers are among the favorites for the services of Shohei Ohtani. 4 teams believed to be the favorites. The reports are that he could sign this week. I believe there was a report that all of his team meetings were going to happen this weekend, and there's a belief that he would sign shortly thereafter. I'll just ask the simple question, Matt. Do you believe anything you read or hear about Shohei Ohtani?
Yes and no. I believe the stuff that's like, oh, he might sign in the next week. Oh, he's, reportedly meeting with teams. I'm done trying to figure out reports that Ohtani is prioritizing the West Coast or he's prioritizing stadium over, location geography, just because that stuff, he doesn't talk about any of that. So I find it hard to believe that there's any significant or substance or merit, if you will, to those reports.
Yeah.
So I believe very little, I guess maybe is the best way to answer it.
Well, Daniel and I did a video Friday and we were kind of like, Jeff Passan is the barometer. I don't even know if I believe Jeff Passan when he tells me something about Ohtani, which tells you how little I believe literally anything else. There's people on Twitter that tweet at me all sorts of rumors and reports. And my response is always, I believe nothing. Like, he's so different. He handles this differently. This is not a normal free agency. He doesn't want anything out there. People are speculating. And the problem with Major League Baseball reporting, I should say all sports reporting, but specific to baseball as well, is that a lot of the reports are like rival teams believe ...
Yeah.
What the heck do rival teams believe? Like, I don't care if AJ Preller thinks the Dodgers are the favorites to sign Ohtani because Preller doesn't know crap, So like a lot of these reports are like many teams believe the Dodgers to be the favorites. It's like, that means nothing to me. I will care nothing. I'm with you. I have one person telling me, hey, the West Coast is where he wants to be. And another person telling me he cares more about stadiums. Well, look, he loved Dodger Stadium. Well, he apparently loves Wrigley Field too. Like, none of that stuff matters to me. I don't think he's going to make a decision the way normal people do. I don't think it's going to be who gives me the most years and the most money, which is what makes this such an interesting conversation around Ohtani. I know you and I at the end of this show are going to get into, do we think the Dodgers actually sign him and make some predictions? But I just, to me, the whole Ohtani process has been fascinating and frustrating, not because of anything he's done, but just because I don't know what I can trust. And that bothers me.
Yeah, and even to as much as the whole West Coast thing, it was something that was attached to Ohtani when he was originally posted 6 years ago. There was thought that he preferred the West Coast, and sure enough, like, he ended up signing with the Angels, so maybe that was a factor, maybe it wasn't. But initially it sort of made sense because I was thinking, well, we heard this the first time around, so yeah, maybe he does just prefer the West Coast. But then the reported group of finalists, which I think there is some substance and truth behind, includes the Cubs and the Blue Jays. Well,
Yeah.
neither one of those teams are on the West Coast, obviously, right? So then when that happens, like, you start to think, well, like I said, what can really be believed at this point? I know there's some predictions that think, like you alluded to, that he might sign during the winter meetings. I'm sort of skeptical on that because I don't know, like, he's a private person.
Yeah.
Pretty much in every sense. Like, does he want to be like, there's already a ton of attention on him. Does he want even more of being like, the winter meetings are about him, even though no matter what he does, they're going to be about him, right? Like, but it wouldn't surprise me if maybe this drags on past the winter meetings that end, I think, on either Wednesday or Thursday. And we, maybe we're sitting here next Sunday and he signs during our show, or maybe, I know we got some tweets tonight saying, Ohtani's going to sign while you guys are on, and hey, I'm all for it. Bring it.
Yeah. No, and then it's like, oh, all he cares about is winning. And it's like the Cubs and the Angels are two of the four teams, like, and the Giants are maybe in the fifth spot. Like, how can you, I don't know how those two things don't line up, So I will say, we've got a commenter, John Cena Dodgers, says Ohtani likes Whataburger more than In-N-Out. If that's the case, I'm not interested in Ohtani. I'm just going to say that. That's a level of poor judgment that I can't handle. So that's all I'm going to say. We'll save the rest of our food conversations for the end here. Let's move on to the other, probably the number 2 biggest free agent, clearly, in Major League Baseball this year, and that is Yoshinobu Yamamoto, starting pitcher. A report today from Susan Slusser that the Giants may be the favorite to sign Yamamoto. Lots of Giants Yamamoto buds. Again, teams around the league think that the Giants have the edge. I don't know what you do with that kind of thing. Passan on Friday had the Dodgers among a group of teams still in on this one, saying that the number keeps climbing higher and higher. It started at 7 years, about $200 million, but people think that number has gone way up. I'll ask you another simple question here, Matt. Can the Dodgers sign Ohtani and Yamamoto, or do you think they need to choose between these two?
Well, I'll take a page out of Blake's book. Yes, they can. They can sign whoever they want and financially pretty much be okay. I don't think they're going to, though. And my stance on that has changed recently, just with, there was, I think John Heyman had the report that Ohtani's contract, might be getting now into like the $600 million neighborhood, which for him, like, you can justify that for him, but you're still looking at, when this sort of started, projections were 500 million. I remember not arguing, but getting into discussions with some of our followers as to, he's not pitching next year, so his value's gonna come down. And I was thinking, okay, like, it'll come down like 5 million, maybe, if that.
Yeah.
And it's gone. If anything, now it's gone up. So considering Yamamoto's market. And I think, originally he was projected to maybe sign for around 200 million. I think what Nola ended up getting, which was 172 from the Phillies, I think that helped Yamamoto. And now with all the interest in him, I think that's driving the price even higher.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I don't see the Dodgers signing both of these guys anymore.
My answer is I think they absolutely could. To your point, they have the money. But the reason I actually believe that is I think they have an uninterrupted focus on Shohei Ohtani.
Yep.
Nothing is going to get in the way. Like a Yamamoto deal is not going to be what stands between the Dodgers and Ohtani. And yet, I think the Aaron Nola reports are what tipped me off. The fact that the Dodgers made an offer to Nola that I believe was the highest AAV that he got offered. I believe he ended up signing a deal that was like one extra year, but only like $5 or $6 million extra dollars, something like that. The fact that, and I was wrong on our video Friday what the offer was. I believe their offer to Nola was right in that $170 million range.
I don't know if I haven't seen a figure. Honestly, the only thing I think I remember seeing was that they weren't like the highest bidder.
Okay.
But to your point, it still could have been like less guaranteed money, but because of the years, like a higher AAV.
Yeah, I think it was they offered a higher AAV, but the Phillies ended up offering $5 or $6 million. And again, like an extra year and $5 or $6 million. So it was more total dollars, but a lesser AAV because it was an extra year. It was 165. Blake in the chat saying it was $165 million offer for Aaron Nola. So anyways, the fact that they were willing to do that, it wasn't like, oh, well, if Nola signs now, they're not going to sign Ohtani. And yes, Yamamoto could end up getting closer to 250 million, which is much larger than 165. But to me, that just says they're going big game hunting, big game fishing, big game hunting, whatever you want, in starting pitching. And again, I think they're all in on Ohtani also. So I think they could. Again, we're going to get to some predictions at the end about whether or not the Dodgers actually will. I've changed my mind a few times on that one about I think the Dodgers are interested in Yamamoto. I think they're in. I think if the dollar number keeps going up and up and up and up, and if they are truly able to land Ohtani, they might have to think twice at 250 million rather than 200 million. And I know it's just money, but they are going to try and fill out a whole roster here, believe it or not. And those might not be the only move. So again, the latest on Yamamoto, Susan Slusser reporting that teams around the league, if you choose to care about this type of thing, believe the Giants now have the edge. Let's get to a couple other smaller rumors, depending on who you ask. This one's an interesting one. A potential Joc Pederson reunion. David Vassay saying nothing is imminent, but there have been conversations between the Dodgers and Joc Pederson. This report, I believe, came out after the Jason Hayward signing. So those two things I would have assumed would have been one or the other. But again, Vassay was reporting this after the fact, and Vassay's not, an idiot. Like he wouldn't have reported this, I don't think, if things had changed because Jason Hayward had signed. So I will save my own personal thoughts on this one. I'll let you speak first. Are you interested in a Joc Pederson reunion?
I am, but I agree with you. Like having Hayward already in the fold, even though that signing still hasn't made official, makes it a little clunky a little redundant to then have Joc. If you would ask me,
Joc Pederson actually plays the outfield.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing too, is Joc definitely profiles more as a DH at this point. And the Dodgers need an outfielder. It was something that we've discussed. Like I don't know, the last time we were on with you and Blake a couple weeks ago, I was stumping for like, hey, let's get like some like an everyday outfielder, not necessarily platoon. And Joc not only is a semi outfielder, he's a platoon at this point. But I do have fond Joctober memories, and so because of that, under the right terms, I could be talked into Joc coming back.
Well, here I'm gonna hate to break this to you, Matt. The nerd numbers like Joc Pederson, and the Matt Moreno numbers don't like Joc Pederson. So real stats bad. 774 OPS, just 0.6 wins above replacement last year. His lowest full season home run total since 2017. He was about a 111 weighted runs created plus. So he was above average offensively, but a 774 OPS for a guy who's one of the worst defensive players in all of Major League Baseball is not awesome. The flip side is the nerd numbers, which I know this is just going to go in one ear and out the other for you. He was in the 80th percentile or better in expected weighted on base average, expected slugging, exit velocity, barrel rate, hard hit rate, walk rate, all in the top 20% of Major League Baseball last year. His walk rate was the highest since 2015. The strikeout rate was the lowest since 2018, which is interesting. So the walk rate goes up, the strikeout rate goes down. But in the meantime, his power went way down. His slugging percentage was down. His home runs were down. This is a guy who only hits right-handers. And again, the headline here, he can't play the field. And so if you're potentially going after Shohei Ohtani, he makes no sense anywhere on the roster, anywhere on the field. And while I'm fine with the StatCast stuff, I've long said Jason Hayward's profile is basically the exact opposite. His real numbers were good and his nerd numbers were bad. I'd still, like, because of the defense, I prefer Jason Hayward and taking my chances. So I was glad they made that decision. Once they signed him, Joc makes no sense to me. And even if they hadn't signed him, I'm not entirely sure what Joc Pederson provides unless it's a backup plan to Shohei Ohtani as your DH.
Yeah, but honestly, even then, like, I find it hard to believe the Dodgers would just skip over JD Martinez. And what I've not to completely go on a tangent, like, it has been interesting that JD's, like, there hasn't really been much reports of interest in JD Martinez. Of course, it doesn't mean that it's not out there or that he's not getting any, but that none of it has sort of surfaced, I think, is interesting. And so, I mean, if the Dodgers don't sign Ohtani, I imagine they turn to JD Martinez pretty quickly and say, hey, like, what's it going to take? And so then at that point, like, Joc is, third or fourth, like, at best, he's your third choice for DH. So I think it would be kind of a fun story. Like I said, there are a lot of fond memories with Joc and what he did in the playoffs. And I know, we've throughout the season and especially in the NLDS, we've been on here and fans are upset at the players the Dodgers have in the playoffs and why they don't perform. Joc is somebody who has. But I mean, especially with Hayward being back, especially with Ohtani, the Dodgers hoping that he's their DH. And if not him, then probably JD Martinez. It just doesn't necessarily make sense from a roster fit standpoint.
Yeah, and I see somebody comparing Joc Pederson to Max Muncy. Just to put things in perspective, nobody liked Max Muncy's performance last year, right? Max Muncy had a higher OPS than Joc Pederson. He had a higher weighted runs created plus than Joc Pederson, and he had 36 home runs compared to Joc Pederson's 15. So if you're just comparing those two players, Max Muncy was already under contract. They play different positions. I'm not saying Max Muncy is a great defensive player, but I think he's a much better defensive player than Joc Pederson is, and he was a much better offensive player last year, just to put things in perspective on those two. So it's too bad. You will have to get Blake another time because Blake's the big Joc Pederson guy. He wants him back, and unfortunately, he's not here to defend himself. So maybe in the chat, he can defend himself in there. Another rumor, excuse me. This one will get people fired up, Matt. I can't imagine a rumor that will get people more excited. Can we talk a little Seth Lugo? Matt, come on now. Seth Lugo, Ari Alexander from Houston says that 2/3 of the league has shown interest, but kind of singled out the Dodgers as a team that is among them. The Dodgers were interested in signing him last year. It did not work out. He had a good year, 3.57 ERA, a 3.83 FIP. Across 146 innings. Expected ERA, which I like better than FIP, was not good, 4.5. The StatCast stuff, not encouraging. Nothing is above average except for his walk rate and his ground ball rate. He was in the 8th percentile for exit velocity, 18th percentile for the whiff rate. So unless the Dodgers see something that they think they can tweak, I don't get this one at all. He's also the guy that was accused the Dodgers of sign stealing. So he's got that in his back pocket. MLB Trade Rumors projects a 3-year, $42 million contract for Lugo. I am sprinting in the other direction of that number, Matt.
Yeah, this is the second consecutive offseason, right? That the Dodgers have been linked to Lugo in free agency. I didn't really get it last year. I don't understand it this year, especially at, the 3 years, $42 million projection, which arguably that could end up being on the low end because those projections are made before, some of the contracts have gone out. And like Daniel mentioned in the video you guys did earlier this past week, it's a good offseason to be a pitcher, especially a starting pitcher right now. So, assuming that 3 years, $40 million is kind of the floor and maybe the best case scenario you'd be getting him at. I don't understand it. I mean, I guess it could be one of those things where the Dodgers are literally just kicking the tires on every potential scenario. You need depth, and I get that, but I'm giving Emmett Sheehan a bigger opportunity before I'm paying Seth Lugo. even, I mean, look, I guess Lugo, if he was willing to come on a 1-year deal, then maybe you kind of take a chance there. But other than that, like I don't see it necessarily making much sense.
I'm looking at this, and there's probably someone out there who's going to tell me I'm crazy. Like, is Seth Lugo dramatically better than Ryan Yarbrough? Like, they already have Yarbrough. Yarborough's a lefty. Yarbrough has the same role where it's like he can be a starter, he can be a reliever, he can be a swingman. Seth Lugo is better than Ryan Yarbrough. Is he better enough to justify going out and spending, like, let alone $14 million a year, $10 million a year? I don't know. I mean, again, his numbers last year were pretty good, depending on which ones you look at. But the StatCast stuff, the 8th percentile in exit velocity against an 18th percentile whiff rate, like those are atrocious numbers. And so just give me Yarbrough in that role. I'll take the poor man's Seth Lugo, if you want to call it that, in Ryan Yarbrough, and be perfectly content with that one. The Dodgers need to do better from a starting pitching perspective than Seth Lugo. So, all right, well, let's shift gears and let's talk about the real story, which is the winter meetings starting this week. Technically tonight, we were talking before, guys are flying in tonight. Excuse me, not expecting big news necessarily, but potentially exciting time. We're hoping that the baseball offseason is going to pick up at the winter meetings. And maybe I'll just start there before we get into Andrew Friedman's quotes. Do you think stuff's going to happen this week, Matt? All the GMs get together in one place. The conversations that they've been having over the phone are now happening in person. Like, do you believe that there's going to be some action this week?
Yeah, I think there will be. I'm not necessarily convinced, though, that it, like I said earlier in the show, I don't know if Ohtani signs during the winter meetings. But I think we will see some sort of activity. It's already picked up a little bit over the past few days. There have been more signings than there kind of had been for, like 6 weeks. And maybe we see, I feel like there's also been a lot of talk just in general about potential trades throughout baseball. And the Dodgers obviously have been linked to a bunch of different scenarios. And so it wouldn't surprise me if maybe a trade or two happens. But, I don't think Yamamoto is not expected to sign. I think he wasn't going to meet with teams in person until after the winter meetings. I don't know if Blake Snell signs. Maybe Scott Boras gets him his, big deal on kind of the final day of the winter meetings. But I feel like Blake Snell's market has sort of is being held up by Yamamoto in some sense. And I know there's been a lot of debate as to who, which of the two is the better bet at this point, but there really hasn't been a whole ton on Snell. So I think we will see some things happening, but not necessarily what everybody may be hoping for. You're muted. You're on mute, Jeff.
I'm muted. Sorry.
Yeah,
We just got a Jim Bowden report about some Joe Kelly terms. So let's talk about this real quick. I'll throw this up here. This was the tweet. Joe Kelly deal with Dodgers, 1 year, $8 million, according to a club source. Off the top of my head, did he have a $10 million team option?
It was 9.5. So they declined that. They paid him the $1 million buyout. So they're saving $500,000.
Interesting. And now Bowden's reporting this. It's possible that they tack on a team option for a second year or something. That feels like the classic Dodgers move here would be to, it's a 1 year deal, but then it comes out that there's a team option. I mean, that would make me feel a little bit better, Matt, if it was a 1 year, $8 million deal and then a team option for like, I don't know, $6 million or something for the second year.
Yeah, either that or who just commented, Derek Nomo Splitter, like he said, the Dodgers need to save money for Ohtani. So every penny counts in these sweepstakes. So that $500,000 may be what gets the Dodgers their biggest offer that they need to for Ohtani.
There you go. It's possible that's what happened. But again, Jim Bowden with that. I do want to shout out Pastor Clyde Wayne. Thank you so much for the super chat. No comment in there, but we appreciate that. As always, if you want to leave us a super chat, greatly appreciate it. We will get to your question or your comment as quickly as we possibly can. I used to say immediately, but then someone would drop one in like 30 seconds into a 3-minute conversation, and I felt bad. I was lying to the people, Matt. And so if you want to leave us a super chat, we will get to that. If you've got questions, feel free to throw those in there. If not, if we've got time at the end, we usually do. We'll get to some questions at the end as well. So here are the Andrew Friedman quotes as we circle back to the winter meetings. He said this, that there is momentum building in lots of areas. Quote, I feel like a lot of things are starting to come to a head. So Friedman kind of hinting at, hey, there's all these rumors. The Dodgers have been connected to Dylan Cease in trade talks, Corbin Burns in trade talks, and that, hey, there's momentum, there's movement. Maybe they're 80% of the way there, 90% of the way there on some of these moves. And just being in person is kind of the thing that pushes it over the edge. That's the hope. If you want to be optimistic, Matt, about some of this stuff happening, that's kind of what you would hang your cap on, is that, hey, get these people in a room, let them bang it out, let them hammer it out. Nobody's distracted. Nobody's on vacation. Nobody's doing any of that stuff. We're talking baseball and we're talking trades. I think that's the optimistic view. And Andrew Friedman is throwing logs on that fire, Matt, by saying, hey, we've got some momentum. Things are starting to come to a head. Again, the beauty of this quote is that even if nothing happens, he can come back and say, hey, I wasn't lying to you. We were 80% of the way there, and the last 20% didn't materialize, right? But I at least want to believe him, Matt. I want to believe that he's telling the truth.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with what I was going to say, but also really quick, Ken Rosenthal reported that the Braves acquired Jared Kelenic from the Mariners. So thank you, Braves, for proving me right. Already there's been activity at the winter meetings, so I didn't lie to our viewers tonight. I just want to point that out. My prediction was correct. But yeah, back to what you were bringing up with Friedman. I agree. I was going to point out that I thought it was kind of interesting where he said there's momentum building with things, but then he also sort of added the caveat of like, well, winter meetings aren't a deadline by any means. Like sometimes it just helps, like you said, get things kind of across the finish line. I think Friedman was probably speaking more in general terms and with momentum building probably just across the sport for stuff to take place, not necessarily specific to only the Dodgers would be my belief. And so he didn't necessarily lie or try to be misleading, which he doesn't try to do. It just sometimes happens on occasion. But yeah, I mean, would I be shocked if the Dodgers were part of some sort of trade? Not completely, but am I really expecting it? No, because Friedman has also been very open about, he doesn't care for kind of these arbitrary sort of debt. Like you don't need to get a deal done at the winter meetings for it to count more, right? And sometimes if teams, I think, sense that there's a little bit of any sort of urgency, then you may end up having to pay more for a free agent or in a trade just because, you want to win the winter meetings, as we've seen some teams try to do. And so am I holding my breath that the Dodgers are going to do anything? No. But would it completely shock me if they did? No.
Yeah. Not that these names will mean a ton to anybody, but the reports are Jared Kelenic, Marco Gonzalez, and Evan White heading to the Braves for right-handed pitcher Jackson Kowar and right-handed pitcher Cole Phillips. Cole Phillips was the number 7 prospect in the Braves system, a guy who was in rookie ball last year. So I don't know. Mariners fans don't seem super thrilled about that, but there you go. Laura with the super chat. Do you believe the Dodgers acquire a number 1 or number 2 starter? If not Yamamoto, who? Laura, this is a great question and is a perfectly timed transition into our prediction segment. So my short answer to this, Matt, is yes, I believe the Dodgers acquire their best starting pitcher on opening day is not currently on the roster. I'm going to say it that way. Do you agree with that sentence?
I do agree with that.
Okay. And by the way, number 1 or number 2, I think you could make the case that if, these terms are relative, right? But if the Dodgers go out and add a number 2 starter, I think you can make the case that could still be the best pitcher the Dodgers have, because Walker Buehler coming off of an injury, Bobby Miller, who has all the potential in the world to be a number 1, was not a number 1 last year. Ryan Pepiot was very good. I think you can make the case Pepiot is the best starter they have on the roster right now. I don't think he's quite like just right in pen that he's a number 2 starter. So I think they acquire the best starter. As we might get to here in a second, they might acquire the 2 best starters they have on their roster. If not Yamamoto, who? Let's get to that question. So what we're going to do is we're going to get to some predictions. Baseball's hilarious that we could do this a month in and nothing has changed. Basically, they added Joe Kelly and Jason Hayward. But let's get to some offseason predictions. I've got a bunch here, but let's just go down the list, Matt, and let's start with the biggest one, Shohei Ohtani. Do you believe that the Dodgers will end the offseason with Shohei Ohtani as a member of the Dodgers?
I do, but honestly, with each passing day, I get less and less confident in it. But I still just, like we discussed earlier in the show, like the one sort of truth seems to be that he does want to play for a contender. And when you look at that, when you look at who the reported finalists are, like I think it's hard to argue against the Dodgers being the best position team at that point. So because of that, I can't see him not signing with the Dodgers. But like I've alluded to earlier, nobody would have expected him to sign with the Angels. And so Otani has proven to be unique in every aspect, in every sense. And so that like concerns me for the Dodgers' sake.
Yeah, it's fair. I think the Dodgers sign Shohei Ohtani. There has been so much smoke. And I want to say this. If the Dodgers do not get Ohtani, it will not be for lack of trying, and it will not be for lack of money, is my view. If he signs somewhere else, I think it's just simply going to be because he wanted to be somewhere else. Like, I just think it's not about who the highest bidder is for this guy. If it's $550 million over 10 years, I think he's just going to pick the place that he wants to play in, and the place that I guess maybe he thinks gives him the best chance of winning. I believe the Dodgers check every box that Ohtani has. I believe geographically it is the best location for him. I believe if he cares about winning, it is easily the best option for him among the 4 teams. I think they're going to be able to pay him all of the money. I think they're going to set him up for success as a player in the way that the Angels did. Because if you want to give the Angels credit, they built a plan for Ohtani as far as pitching and hitting that was successful, that worked. And so I think the Dodgers are the team you can trust the most out of any of the others to do that. And so my first prediction is that the Dodgers do sign Shohei Ohtani. It sounds like maybe less confident than me. And I'm not saying I'm 100% confident. If you asked me to choose, I would say 60% yes, he comes to LA, 40% he goes somewhere else. You are maybe 51-49 yes for Ohtani to the Dodgers?
I mean, honestly, maybe 55% yes, he ends up with the Dodgers. I think, I agree with a lot of what you said. What I wonder though is if Ohtani's market truly does get closer to 600 million than 500 million.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm as convinced as you are that the Dodgers will extend themselves to that point. And I want to believe that they would. I want to believe that this is the one time that Andrew Friedman would recognize that it's a unique player. And now is the time to like break the bank, if you will. But so far with Friedman, we've seen the Dodgers be, quote unquote, aggressive, but they also have their line in the sand that they just decide not to go past. And so that history like has me a little worried that if Ohtani's market gets so astronomical, do the Dodgers decide that, hey, we were willing to go 550 type thing, not 595, not 600, if that's where it's getting.
My only thing is I can't imagine another team being willing to offer more money than the Dodgers. I'd have to think of who the team is. And I know people are pointing out how rich the Blue Jays owner is. I just can't see another team going to a level that the Dodgers wouldn't, because we're talking about how unprecedented of numbers. We're not talking 300, 350, 400 million. We're talking 550 million. And so I just think the Dodgers will go there. So first prediction, we both say yes to Ohtani. Second prediction, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I flip-flopped on this one, Matt, but as of today, as the numbers go up, as the rumors increase, I actually think the Dodgers miss out on Yamamoto.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm out on Yamamoto from the Dodgers standpoint at this point. I just think
you're out as in you're not interested, or you don't think he's going to come?
I don't think he's going to come. Sorry, that was I worded that poorly. At 200 million, had his market, maybe stayed there, I could see it. But like you said, there seems to be no shortage of interest, and that invariably will drive up the price. And I think, again, if we're talking the Dodgers possibly needing to go to 550, 600 million for Ohtani, if Yamamoto's market is also soaring, I don't see them making that commitment to him, especially with some of the depth that they do have and some of, I think, the other pieces that are out there. Most notably, I think they will just look to sort of start planning for the future again when his full name, Roki, is posted at some point. Sasaki. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's interesting, by the way. I'm just following Twitter on this Kalenic deal. The Mariners believed to be dumping salary Marco Gonzalez and Evan White. They're a team that has reportedly not been willing to go there financially on Ohtani. Is it possible they're clearing the decks financially here? I don't know. I'm not trying to connect those dots, but I'm just throwing out there some of the things that are running through my mind. So
you're just trying to get Ohtani to the Pacific Northwest with you.
Hey, I said at the beginning that I thought the Mariners were the dark horse, and then all the reports were that the Mariners were interested, but not willing to go there financially. So there you go. So we're both in on Ohtani. We're both out on Yamamoto as far as predictions go. So then the question back to Laura's super chat: who are they going out and getting? I'll start with mine, Matt, and I'll let you react. I think the first move of two from a starting pitching perspective the Dodgers make is I think they trade for Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease has 2 years of team control remaining. He had a bad year last year, 4.58 ERA, which was far worse than his expected ERA, which is about 4. He had a 2.2 ERA the year before, was in Cy Young contention. He's made 97 starts over the last 3 years, basically hasn't missed a start. I mentioned 2 years of team control remaining. So I think they make a move. I tried to put together packages. I'm not great at putting together packages. I'm going to have if half the people tell me I overpaid and half the people tell me I underpaid, then I think we're probably in the vicinity. He's coming off of a down year, but he was a Cy Young type guy the year before. He does have 2 years of team control and not 1. I think Gavin Stone type has to be in there. I think an Andy Pages type. Maybe you need a third piece that's like a non-40-man roster guy who's well-liked in that package as well. And just for fun, I threw Austin Barnes in this package as well. Chicago needs a veteran catcher, Matt. They need to, as they rebuild the culture there, I think they get Austin Barnes as part of this package. So I'm clearing Stone and Pages and Barnes off of the 40-man roster, which I think is part of this. Again, I think there needs to be another piece in there. I don't think it's a Michael Busch level player that needs to be included in there. Maybe it's Yorbeat Vivas gets thrown in. That's another 40-man type guy, but I think it's built around something like that. But I think they go get Dylan Cease.
Yeah, I think that's a relatively fair trade offer. That being said, I don't know. I mean, I guess if that's what it takes, then I would do it. If it's more than that, I would back away from Cease. Yes, there's the upside that he has compared to, somebody like Corbin Burns or Shane Bieber, who also, or even Glasnow, who reported as being on the trade market as well, is that he has the second year of team control, which I think is noteworthy. But I worry about kind of what he didn't have a great year, and there have been, I think, some signs of him not necessarily declining, but prolonged struggles of late.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and I see people saying, hey, he isn't an ace. This depends on 2 years ago, he was one of the best pitchers in baseball, and this price would have been 3x. Last year, again, was a down year, but I think if you're the Dodgers, you look at what a dumpster fire the Chicago White Sox was as a whole, and you say maybe there's more in the tank there for a guy like Dylan Cease. So that's my first move. My second move is that, okay, so sorry. Is Cease the guy that, if we're talking trades, is Cease the guy that you would target, or would you? I mean, Corbin Burns is better. He's 1 year of team control. I think the price would be more expensive and the Brewers aren't. I'm still not convinced, are going to move. So, where are you at on if it was a trade and we're not talking free agents, or maybe I'll ask it this way: how do you view Cease compared to the Blake Snells of the world, the Montgomerys of the world, who are kind of the top free agent guys left?
I think better than Montgomery. I think in terms of talent, not necessarily as good as Snell, but Snell's walk rate concerns me. And I've never,
wow, a rate? Wait, did you just quote a rate stat?
I'm trying to appeal to the other side. I'm trying to expand myself.
It's amazing.
I've been writing about Blake Snell, so that's why the walk rate sticks out. His walks there, I'll say it that way.
Total number of weight. You had a lot of walks.
Yeah, the 4 balls to each batter that worries me. So I probably still have Cease behind him in terms of trade candidates. I think Burns is probably at the top of the list for me.
Yeah,
I might then put Bieber second, and then Cease probably third.
Yeah, and by the way, I should have clarified. My predictions here are a mix of reality compared as well as what I want. So. It would be easy to say, sign Yamamoto, trade for Corbin Burns. We're trying to mix in, what is a realistic outcome for a Dodgers offseason, which is how I got here. So I think Cease is my first move. The second is Shota Imanaga, another pitcher that's coming over this year. I've got him coming to the Dodgers. Trade rumors projecting 5 years, $85 million. He's a 30-year-old. He's a lefty. They need some lefties. I mentioned this in the video. His nickname, apparently, according to Wikipedia, is the throwing philosopher. He's been great from a run prevention perspective. The strikeout rate was great, but maybe the most Dodgers thing ever. And you'll love this, Matt. 3.8% walk rate. That's very good. He doesn't walk anybody. He strikes a lot of guys out. He's kind of a mid-rotation, number 2, number 3 type guy. Low to mid 90s fastball. Great changeup. Elite command. Cubs, Dodgers, Red Sox, the 3 teams that have been linked. I just feel like you go out and get a guy like Cease, who, again, I know there are going to be people that are like, if that's the best guy they get, you're going to be disappointed. But I think if they get Ohtani and if they get a guy in Cease, who's probably your number 1, and then a guy like Imanaga, who's a mid-rotation starter, maybe you don't have an elite number 1, although I think Cease has that ceiling in him. But all of a sudden, you look at if Bobby Miller's your 5th best starting pitcher next year, you kind of may not have a number 1, but you've got 5 guys in the 2 to 3 range sort of for major league starting pitching.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Imanaga is an interesting possibility for the Dodgers. I think if his market sort of doesn't get too crazy, then I could see them. But I kind of alluded to earlier with Yamamoto, like I feel like the Dodgers may get to a point where they feel like, hey, we're better off just kind of saving our money for the future for Sasaki once he's posted. And let's go. We have a ton of prospects. We have a ton of guys on our 40-man roster. Let's just go the route of trades and try to address the rotation that way.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. So again, I'm a yes on Ohtani, a no on Yamamoto. They trade for Dylan Cease. They signed Shota Imanaga. Now you might think, hey, they're done with starting pitching, right? They've already got Buehler, Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepio, Emmett Sheehan waiting in the wings. But Matt, we haven't answered one of the biggest questions for the Dodgers with Clayton Kershaw. And you know what I say? Bring him back, baby. 1 year, $10 million deal for Clayton Kershaw. He's only going to be available for half the year. But hey, he's basically a guy that you're acquiring at the trade deadline. Just pencil it in now. Put him on the 60. Don't sign him basically once the season starts. He goes straight to the 60-day IL. But I've got Kershaw coming back as well.
If Kershaw wants to be back, the Dodgers will make it happen. Like we discussed earlier in the offseason, and I don't know if it was one of our shorter videos during the week or a Sunday night show. I think, though, that I'm at the point where I see Kershaw signing with the Rangers. So because of that, look, if he wants to be back, go for it. I just don't necessarily see him coming back. Yeah.
Okay. So I've got Kershaw. Now I've got one last prediction for you here, Matt. And this one's my crazy idea. I just was like, I want to get a little creative. And we've solved our pitching problems. So we've now got basically a 5-man rotation of Dylan Cease, Ryan Pepio, Walker Buehler, Bobby Miller, Shota Imanaga. Those are our 5. We've got Emmett Sheehan. We've got Landon Knack. We've got Michael Grove. We got some depth. Clayton Kershaw coming back midway through. We talked about the bullpen earlier. The bullpen is full. Looking at the offense, we got Shohei Ohtani as a DH. We're feeling good about that. Nick Frasso, as somebody points out, another one there. But the one thing that I'm looking at is it feels like they're one hitter short. And you're looking around, okay, catcher is solved. I traded Austin Barnes away. So we've got Will Smith and Hunter Fiducia, Manning catcher. We got Freddie Freeman at first base. Brandon Gomes is telling me Gavin Lux is going to be the starter at shortstop. We got Miguel Rojas backing him up. We got Max Muncy on the infield. In the outfield, you got Mookie Betts, James Outman, Jason Hayward, Chris Taylor. So I'm looking at that. Ohtani's the DH. So we need either an outfielder, or because you have Mookie Betts, or a second baseman. But because you have Mookie Betts, you got a little flexibility. Mookie Betts could come in and play some second base. You could shift Muncy and Lux around. You got Miguel Vargas and Michael Busch kind of in the mix. So I think the Dodgers, Matt, are going to make a trade for an outfielder. And interestingly enough, a number of people in the chat have mentioned the person and are currently mentioning the person that I'm talking about. And it's Randy Arozarena. I think the Dodgers go out and make a Randy Arozarena trade. Now it would be expensive. 3 years of team control remaining. He is elite offensively. However, he's really bad defensively. Like very, very bad. Like you look at his offensive numbers and then you expect to see a huge number in the wins above replacement category. And it's 3 point something because he's that bad defensively. And yet, he's athletic. I think the Dodgers could figure it out. The Dodgers could throw him in left field, and I think they could mask it. They could put him in the right position. I think they could kind of get it together. So I think they go out and get a Rosarena. Now, it's not going to be cheap. 3 years of team control remaining. I think Diego Cartaya has to be in this trade. It might take Michael Busch as well. And then you're throwing in some pitching. Maybe it's Michael Grove. Maybe it's Landon Knack. I've got Victor Gonzalez as a dump in this trade as well. Just to, again, part of this is moving 3 or 4 guys for one, clearing up some 40-man roster spots. Move Mookie to second base. Now your outfield is a Rosarena in left field. You've got a platoon of Jason Hayward and Chris Taylor in right field. You've got James Outman in center field. And I say you go for it. Your thoughts?
That works for me if it ends up being a Glasnow or Rosarena package. And so then at that point, are the Dodgers probably not trading for Cease then? I don't necessarily. I don't see them. And I don't see them just doing, I don't see the Rays either necessarily just doing an Rosarena trade. I think they want to get out from Glasnow's. I think he's projected to get like $25 million in arbitration or something like that. So that's a big number for them. If it's Glasnow or Rosarena, I could be talked into it and not necessarily Cease. Like, I think that could work. And maybe at that point they sign the lefty. His name is I forgot how do you pronounce it? Imanaga. There we go. I knew there was an N in there that I'm
guessing on the pronunciation there, but I just, it's like you say it with confidence.
And, that works.
Go for it.
So maybe that ends up being maybe a more realistic plan for them.
Yeah. So if they don't go a Rosarena, how would you fill out the offensive side? I'm looking at, again, you've got 2 catchers. You've got Freeman, Lux, Rojas, Muncy in the infield. So you've got a hole at second base. You've got Outman, Taylor, Hayward, Betts in the outfield, Otani at DH. You've got Johnny DeLuca as a potential outfield guy who could mix in, obviously Miguel Vargas and Michael Busch as well. Do they have the pieces there, or do they need to go out and add a second baseman, add a middle infielder, add an outfielder, add a third baseman? I mean, they have guys on the infield that you feel like could move around. Even Max Muncy, they could theoretically move to second base if they found a third baseman, or they could go sign a right fielder and move Mookie into the infield. Like, do you think they need to make another move? Or if they go out and get Otani, are you comfortable with sort of what they did last year, which is hoping that either Michael Busch or Miguel Vargas figures it out enough to fill like kind of the one hole they have left, which currently sits at second base?
Can we even say that they were hoping for anything with Michael Busch?
Yeah, fair. Who knows? They keep saying that they think he's a major league player.
Yes. I would move Mookie to second base pretty much on an everyday basis.
Okay.
I think that makes sense for several reasons. And so then at that point, you're looking at either getting a right. I know Jason Hayward primarily played right field last year or this past season. But if you find a right fielder and you put Hayward in left to platoon there, then that works. But yes, I think they need another bat on. I mean, that's kind of addressed in some sense with Otani, but even then I would probably get like, if they do sign Otani, they're going to have a ton of left-handed hitters.
Yeah.
And we've joked about this, like one reason or another, every year the Dodgers seem to be looking for a right-handed hitter at the trade deadline. So, in a perfect world, maybe you get, whether it's a Rosarena or another everyday outfielder who bats right-handed, and you plug them in at one of the corners.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. And look, this is the thing. The beauty of this exercise is it's just fun to look at. Okay, who are the guys that are theoretically available for trade? Who would be a good fit? I see some of the names in the chat, and we all have personal preferences. Like Willy Adames is a guy that every time I look at his numbers, I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get why people want to pay, mortgage the farm for a middle infielder who's really good defensively and not very great offensively, even though he hits home runs. I think he's the type that, like, if you had to watch him offensively every day, you wouldn't like him nearly as much as the idea of Willy Adames on another side. That's my view. There are other people that obviously really like him. I could be talked into pretty much any starting pitcher. Corbin Burns would be amazing, depending on what the cost was. Tyler Glasnow, I'm fine with, depending on what the cost is. That's why I think Cease, I think the White Sox are probably more eager to sell. And because he had a down year last year, maybe you get a little bit of a discount there. He's got multiple years remaining of team control, which I think kind of lines up with some of the stuff the Dodgers have. So And yet, I see Blake made a comment saying, "Hey, well, if they're going to go out and get all these guys, they're not going to have a farm system left." Well, they have too many guys on their 40-man roster. They keep having to protect guys from the Rule 5 draft, and you've got to trade them at some point in order to get something. So, I think they're going to have to go out and make some sort of moves here to move some guys around. And Diego Cartaya, I don't think they sell low on him, but that might be an option. Michael Busch, again, it feels like you're selling low. Miguel Vargas would sell low. Which starting pitchers available? I don't think Bobby Miller, Pepio, or Emmett Sheehan. And so you got to move Frasso. Maybe, everybody loves Frasso then. And so it's like, well, you have to trade guys in order to get guys. And if you want top of the line starting pitching and you don't like Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, you're going to have to trade. And so I think that's what makes this fun. And we'll see what happens. I see super chat here from Laura. I heard Kike reunion rumors. This is a guy that makes a ton of sense to me because it's the Joe Kelly thing. Like he went somewhere else and it wasn't as awesome. The grass was not greener. He came back. The Dodgers know how to use him. If he's willing to accept the role that he is best in, which is play all over the field, provide solid defense, even though I know the numbers weren't awesome at shortstop, but he's competent defensively a lot of places, be a platoon guy, be an energy guy. He's hitting the postseason. If you're not going to swing big for a Randy Arozarena type, I would have zero issue whatsoever with a Kike Hernandez reunion.
Yeah, and to the reunion point, Kike himself said he would be open to coming back. He also said that he recognizes that he's in a different position. I'm paraphrasing, but basically, like he's in a different position in free agency this time around than last time. Whereas he definitely wanted an everyday role after the 2020 season. That was a big reason why he ended up leaving because that wasn't going to happen here. So I think, like you said, he has maybe recognized that the Dodgers know how to best utilize him.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to being comfortable where you are playing. And I think Kike clearly, he's never said a bad word about Boston, but obviously after the first, year, he definitely had a first good season there, maybe a good second season, and things kind of started to go south for various reasons. In LA, he kind of improved, I think, as each sort of year and grew into a larger role with the team. And so he enjoys being here. The fans love him. And so I think, like you said, with the Joe Kelly thing, it makes sense. And not to take money out of Kike's pocket by any means, but hopefully the Dodgers do a little bit more of a team friendly deal there if they do pursue a reunion than what happened with Joe Kelly.
Yep. I'm with you on that one. I think it's a number there, but again, I think that Kike is kind of the perfect barometer of everybody wants guys who perform in the postseason, right? So a guy like Kike, like, do you want him around for a full season, just hoping that he catches fire again for like the 3 weeks that you hope your postseason lasts to be? I mean, that's the tough part with Joc Pederson. Again, these are guys who weren't very good for 162 games, and Kike even cooled off during his time with the Dodgers. And yet, kind of when the moments are big, they tend to perform. And so I know people want that, and I'm not saying that they're wrong for wanting it, but that's the tricky part. That's why I say go get a Arozarena. He's good for 162, and then he's good in the postseason as well. So let's get to some questions here. If you've got a question, throw it in the chat. All caps question, followed by your question. We will get to those. We've got a little bit of extra time tonight, so we'll take 5 or 10 minutes to answer those. We'll get to some food stuff at the end because I'm telling you, this Matthew Moreno food take is a spicy one, to say the least. Even Blake Williams was shocked by this one. So
I think Jeff is overselling it. Let me. I don't want the people. I don't want the people to expect something crazy.
All right. So, here we go. David wants to know: would this offseason be a total bust if the Dodgers don't sign Ohtani?
I mean, I think so. Like every past 2-3 years at least, they've been kind of preparing for this moment, and it's unfortunate that it finally has gotten here. And Ohtani had what has been reported as a second Tommy John surgery, because not only are the Dodgers in need of his talent at the plate, but they have a desperate need for starting pitching. Yeah, and unfortunately, at least for 2024, that's not in the cards for Ohtani. But yeah, I think it's going to be a huge disappointment. Honestly, the Friedman and the front office, fair or not, are going to catch a ton of heat if they don't sign Ohtani.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the disappointment is a better word than bust, just because, and it's going to sound like I'm hedging. I don't think I am. You can accuse me of whatever you want. I genuinely don't know how much control the Dodgers have over Ohtani and where he wants to go. That's the thing that I keep coming back to. Like, the Dodgers can be all in on Ohtani. They can offer the most money, and there's still a chance he chooses to go somewhere else. And so that's the part where I would shift from bust to disappointment, because it wouldn't be as if they failed in their pursuit of Shohei Ohtani as much as he just chose someone else. That said, while I think it's a disappointment, I do think there's a path forward. If they responded by going out and signing Yamamoto and trading for Corbin Burns and, then adding JD Martinez or something, like, I think if there's a combination of moves after the fact, that maybe it's not an A+ offseason, but I think you could still be in that B+ territory if they go out and sign two, a number 1 and a number 2 starting pitcher via trade or whatever. I think there's a way to salvage it, not to the level of, oh my gosh, the greatest offseason in history, but you walk away saying, dang, I really wish they had gotten Ohtani, but you know what? Yamamoto and Corbin Burns, not a bad consolation prize. That's kind of my thoughts, Matt.
That's fair. I'm just skeptical on, do they end up being that aggressive to address their roster after that? Is that the plan B? I'm not necessarily as sold on that. But yeah, if that is what ends up being the case, then maybe not a bust, but like you said, a disappointment. But hey, they still put together a really good team.
If the Dodgers don't sign Ohtani or Yamamoto, then I think it's a bust. I think if they get one of the two, I think there's a pathway forward. Obviously, Ohtani by himself is basically a successful offseason. So, your girl Cassie wants to know, did the Dodgers bring JT home? This is a quick no for me, Matt. I guess if Ohtani doesn't come, maybe, right?
Maybe, but I don't know. I don't see that as being any likely scenario.
Yeah, fair. Let's see some other questions here. Dave wants to know, for the last corner outfield spot, would you rather give Johnny DeLuca a shot or go with a vet like Joc or Kike? Prospect guys like Casey Porter are saying DeLuca is legit. DeLuca has crushed lefties, so I think there's potential for a platoon type. Obviously, Dave is projecting what you mentioned, that Mookie Betts would move to the infield with this, because I think Jason Hayward and Chris Taylor are kind of a perfect platoon on one side. I think Outman's an everyday guy. So would you rather give DeLuca a shot or go with a vet like Joc or Kike?
I would go with Kike over DeLuca. Joc, like I alluded to, as much as I think there is kind of a fun narrative to Joc coming back for the purpose of the roster with Jason Hayward already, not official yet, but basically re-signing Joc just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at this basically as, is it Kike or DeLuca? I'm still going Kike. DeLuca had some nice flashes, but we didn't see, he pulled his hamstring, unfortunately. And so we didn't see enough of him yet, I think, to really trust, to know what you fully have. And again, what I go back to is, the Dodgers need to put a roster together for the playoffs, because the regular season, as much as you don't take it for granted, they've proven time and time again that they have figured out the regular season. And so I know everybody was excited this year to let the kids play, and that for various reasons that sort of fell flat on its face. And that doesn't mean DeLuca can't come up and contribute at some point or develop into a great player, but I don't think 2024 would be the time to really test that.
Yeah, and look, I think one thing you could add here, Dave, is it could be Johnny DeLuca / Miguel Vargas / Michael Busch as kind of filling that last spot. Because again, I think second base is the most obvious opening. Again, you could move Mookie Betts there. They've talked about Busch and Vargas potentially trying to play some left field. You could move Max Muncy from third base to second. I think if you said, hey, I need one of DeLuca, Busch, and Vargas, I need one of these three guys to be good, I wouldn't hate that. Again, I would bring back Kike and then take my chances with that and just figure it out from there. But I'm with you. Joc is not the guy. I like DeLuca too, to be clear. I had a good feeling about James Outman. I was pretty high on James Outman heading into last year. I'm not ready to say that DeLuca is, I feel the way about DeLuca I did about James Outman, but I see some similarities in the types of guys that the Dodgers have had success in developing, where it doesn't always have to follow a linear, prospecty type thing. Always a top 100 prospect guy, then he bursts. Sometimes the Dodgers just figure it out. It also might have something to do with the fact that he's an Agora Hills and University of Oregon guy. So, DeLuca does have that going for him. Let's get some more questions. C-Raz wants to know, who do you see going in a trade for Glasnow and Arozarena? A lot is going the other way in that one. I think Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepio, and Emmett Sheehan are the three guys who are kind of off limits. I think Cartaya is probably moving in that trade. I think Gavin Stone is probably moving in that trade. Nick Frasso might be moving in that trade.
Bush.
Michael Busch probably moving in that trade. Like, they're going to have their pick of the Dodgers' top prospects, and there's going to be a few of them because, again, Arozarena has 3 years of team control, and Glass now, when healthy, is one of the best guys in the system. So, again, I would put Bobby Miller, Ryan Pepio, and Emmett Sheehan as off limit. I mean, could Gavin Lux be involved in a trade like that? Potentially, depending on what his value is. Like, I don't think Miguel Vargas is off limits necessarily. I think Outman's off limits. I mean, guys that haven't produced already at the major league level, I think it's pretty much fair game. So,
and I think also too, what's hard when discussing something like this is you need to evaluate, like, as much as Tyler Glass now I think would be a boost for the Dodgers rotation and a needed addition. Dodgers still conceivably would need maybe another starting pitcher depending on what's happened in free agency, and so you can't like give up the farm for Glass now and Arozarena if you're still thinking we might need to trade for Cease or Burns as well, because you're going to need some trade chips for that.
Yep, I'm with you. Eddie wants to know, what do you think about Bo Bichette trade rumors? Is he worth a trade with Lux to the Blue Jays? I believe the Blue Jays have said they're not trading Bo Bichette. Is that's the last thing I saw? Is that where you're at?
Yes.
Matt?
Yeah, we have that up on our website. Their GM came out, and I mean, again, it could just like, he's not going to come out and say, well, the White Sox general manager said they're open for business, but a general manager typically isn't going to come out and say, yes, we're looking to trade X player. So it could just have been, public comments that he's giving, but I think there is merit to it. The Bichette trade rumors didn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense to begin with. I was skeptical as to whether the Blue Jays were even going to be motivated to move him, but yeah, it doesn't appear likely.
Jason wants to know, after Hader's diva performance last year in San Diego with his demands on how he is used, any interest in him as a Dodgers closer? I mean, in theory, I like Josh Hader. We went over the bullpen. There's not really a need. And I mean, look, Hader would be the best reliever in the Dodgers bullpen. I want to be clear about that. But I don't think that's like where I would allocate resources given the state of the roster already and given the needs elsewhere.
Yeah, considering what it would probably take to sign him, I just don't think it's necessarily worth it. I mean, maybe if the Dodgers had a glaring need at closer, then perhaps, but I don't think that it makes sense.
Okay. Derek wants to know, what food would you eat to make yourself feel better if Ohtani doesn't sign with the Dodgers, Matt?
I'm probably running to McDonald's. It's always kind of a guilty pleasure, especially if it breaks like late at night. I think that's where I would end up.
Yeah, I was going to say fast food. I've been known to take down a Taco Bell box. There's a Wendy's. Taco Bell and Wendy's with McDonald's a close third. Those are the most convenient fast food items. But yeah, it'd probably be one of those three. TQT. It's hard to get a legit ace. Yamamoto is too expensive. Rangers won it all with a bunch of number 3s. What about signing 2 to 3 solid mid-rotation guys? I'm thinking Stroman, Giolito, and Flaherty. Giolito and Flaherty, like, I'm fine with as, like, if you go out and get an ace and then the second guy you sign is Giolito or Flaherty, like, I'm okay with that. They need to get sign one person that is like a surefire, you feel really good about it. And so even in mine, like I don't think Cease is necessarily a surefire thing. I think Imanaga is like going to be, I feel really good just about like, he's going to be a number 3. And so that's not the sexiest thing in the world, but then it allows me to gamble a little bit with my other move and say, hey, the upside on Cease, 2 years of team control, etc. Like, I don't think you can get Cease and Flaherty because, like, I don't know if you have anything for sure if those are your 2 guys. So I don't like the idea of limiting myself to Stroman, Giolito, and Flaherty, even if Giolito or Flaherty are guys that as a secondary move I'm okay with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, for me, I've long been over the, hey, let's go for quantity instead of quality in some aspects. I think, like I've expressed on our show several times, give me as many good to great players as possible, and let's stack an all-star team, and I'll take my chances with that. I know that the most talented team doesn't always win, but I'm still in the camp of give me all the all-stars, and I'll see how that goes. And I will note that, yes, the Rangers won with that type of pitching staff, but also they had Corey Seager, which I'm still trying to figure out how the Dodgers can maybe find a guy like that at one of these years.
They should. Michael wants to know, why aren't the Dodgers more concerned about getting lefty starters and lefty relievers? Snell is a mirage. He doesn't count. He's going to have a rude decline. We can trade for lefties too, by the way. we walked through it. Caleb Ferguson is a lefty. Ryan Yarbrough, Alex Vesia. Those are Victor Gonzalez, I guess. Those are 4 lefties who are on the 40-man roster. Ferguson, I think you feel pretty good about. I still have hope for Vesia. Yarbrough, I think, has a role. But to your point, other than Imanaga, they're not really talking about any left-handed starting pitchers. Clayton Kershaw, but he's out. And yet, it's kind of like you have to play the hand you're dealt, and the guys that are out there tend to be right-handers for whatever reason right now. And so, I guess I'll ask it this way. Do the Dodgers need to be intentional about, hey, we need to have a lefty in our rotation, or are you just concerned about going and getting the 2 best starters that you can for the price that's good and figure the rest out later?
Yeah, you just get the best you can. And, if all things were equal and there was an A+ left-hander and an A+ right-hander, then at that point you can really maybe nitpick and say, well, we have a lot of righties already. Let's go and get the lefty instead. The bigger thing, especially when it comes to relievers, and Dave Roberts talks about it a lot, is, if a guy, his favorite word is neutral. And the Dodgers tend to look for relief pitchers that are neutral and can face both right and left-handed batters. And having, a shutdown lefty reliever is certainly beneficial, but it's not as valuable anymore with the 3-batter rule, because the number of instances where you're going to have, a big left on left situation, and that's the only batter the guy can face, doesn't happen as often anymore.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. Laura wants to know, when are Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin due back?
So Gonsolin is 2025. And Dustin May, I thought it was kind of interesting. Brandon Gomes recently said that he hadn't started throwing yet, and the Dodgers weren't going to push him by any means. And Gomes basically did not commit to Dustin May pitching next season, which I thought wasn't a huge surprise, but it is definitely a little concerning. And so a best case scenario, I think, for May would be second half of the season, but Gonsolin should be out for all of next year.
Yeah, not a lot of options or hope. It's kind of like the Trinan thing. If we got our hopes up that Trinan was going to come back or Fireisen was going to come back, we were ultimately disappointed. You're better off just assuming both of those guys are done for all of next year, and then go from there. So, all right, let's see if we have. Michael wants to know, will we be live for breaking news for the Dodgers? That's the goal. So Monday, Jason Hayward signs, that contract comes out. We had a show, not live. We had a 1-year, $9 million Jason Hayward deal. Didn't necessarily feel like it justified a live show. Joe Kelly reports, but if Ohtani signs, we will do our best to be live. Absolutely. Yamamoto as well. So we're going to do our best, I guess, is the short version here. Yeah. It is a priority for us.
It definitely is a priority. The Ohtani signing is sort of time zone dependent. So hopefully he'll be considerate of us on the West Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's just get to it, Matt. Chick-fil-A, there was a conversation that happened via Chick-fil-A. And why don't you tell the people, of all the chicken items on Chick-fil-A's menu, the highest rated chicken item on Chick-fil-A's menu in the mind of Matthew Moreno is what?
Yeah, I was trying to help you guys out and inform you, let you in on a pretty well-kept secret, I think. And I can't take credit for it. My wife is actually who first started getting their chicken noodle soup first. And then I had it recently. And I thought it was very good. And I've come on here before and said, the Chick-fil-A their spicy chicken sandwiches, I think, is kind of average. Their grilled one with bacon and cheese and stuff is okay. But I was trying to tell you guys about the chicken noodle soup, and for some reason, that turned out to be a controversial opinion.
Yeah.
And then I defended it by saying, and Blake is in the comments asking, why would anyone get soup and blah, blah, blah. My point, you don't have to just get soup. You could get anything else with it. It doesn't need to be only soup. But then you did agree with me because I mentioned Islands, their chicken tortilla soup is very good. So that was my point.
I'm not anti-soup.
Yeah, I don't know. Blake is for whatever reason.
Look, Blake has his own history of food opinions here. So.
Yeah. So that's that.
So you have chicken noodle. To be clear, Matt has chicken noodle soup from Chick-fil-A ranked ahead of their chicken sandwich, ranked ahead of their chicken nuggets, ranked ahead of spicy everything, grilled everything. The number one chicken item at Chick-fil-A in your estimation is chicken noodle soup.
Yes.
It's crazy.
And I'll take it a step further. The number one item at Chick-fil-A period is their fries.
I mean, I think their fries are fine. My hottest take is I actually don't think Chick-fil-A's fries are that great. my Chick-fil-A take is this. The first time I went to Chick-fil-A, I thought it was supremely overrated. I couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, people excited about this.
I agree.
The second time I went back, and this is it's a funny story because like the second time I went back, someone had given me a gift card and it was like a sizable gift card. So like money was not a factor at all. And I liked it a lot better. It's like when I wasn't paying for it, I was like, all right, I got a chicken sandwich and chicken nuggets, fries, unsweetened iced tea. I'm like, this is a great meal. It's expensive. All that's probably $10. But I'm in on Chick-fil-A. I will say I would never order chicken soup from Chick-fil-A. Like never. It's like if I'm ordering chicken soup, I would just go somewhere else.
But where, like, from a especially from a
yeah,
fast
I'm not
food
getting
place,
soup from fast food. So that's
so,
part of
like,
me.
that's like, it's good, and I stand by that. And like I said, I was trying to
But
help
you're
guys.
saying you like it. This isn't like
Yeah.
Chick-fil-A sucks. You're saying like you would go to a Chick-fil-A to order the chicken noodle soup. It's not just like Chick-fil-A sucks, and if you force me to eat there, I would get this.
Correct. That being said, I need to be in the mood. Like, I don't eat soup like on a regular basis, so I need to be like in the mood. When it gets quote unquote cold in Southern California,
Quote
and
unquote.
I'm feeling like some soup would be good. I would go there for that. But I mean, it's not like I'm not picking a Chick-fil-A chicken noodle soup over like a double from In-N-Out.
Okay. Would Raising Cane's or Chick-fil-A?
Oh, Raising Cane's.
Okay.
I mean, that's it. Raising Cane, yeah, because everything is good. But again, at Raising Cane's, their toast is better than the chicken. Their fries, I think, are better than the chicken.
Their toast is better than the chicken. Oh my goodness. I have a funny Cane's story. My parents just moved to a place that has Raising Cane's. My parents had never been. I was very sick, so I sent in an order like, "Hey, can somebody go pick up Cane's?" Because it's like, I don't have one where I live. They have one there. And my dad ordered the chicken sandwich at Cane's.
I
And
wondered
I was
about
like,
that.
oh my goodness. I was like, and it's 3 chicken tenders. He loved it. So it's like, I didn't want to spoil his fun, but I was like, how do you go to Cane's and not order a chicken tender box? It was just a miss.
Well, but like their chicken sandwich, it is the chicken tenders,
it's just
right?
3 chicken tenders on a bun.
Yeah, I've wondered about it, but I don't need, I don't feel like I need the bread. Like the chicken tenders are good on their own, so I've never gotten the sandwich from there.
Yeah, I'm with you. So anyways, Matt likes the chicken noodle soup at Chick-fil-A is the number 1 chicken item. I can't remember what mine was. The chicken sandwich, the chicken nuggets, those are both like easily above. Again, I would never order chicken noodle soup from Chick-fil-A. Never. Even as a side, nothing. Blake loves the mac and cheese. I'm out on the mac and cheese. If I'm going to Chick-fil-A, I'm getting a chicken sandwich. I'm getting chicken nuggets. I'm getting fries. And I'm getting an unsweetened iced tea with a lemon. Like that's it. It's just there's no variation in my order there. So
that's fair.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's like, hey, don't yuck someone else's yum. That's something my daughter started saying. Don't yuck someone else's yum. So we do a terrible job of not yucking someone else's yum on this show, and I'm not committing to doing that. It's something I'm trying to teach my 9-year-old, but I'm doing a bad job of modeling it myself. So there you go. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for tonight's show. That's Matthew Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. Thanks everyone for joining us. If you stayed through our food conversation, thank you. We greatly appreciate it. A huge turnout tonight, over 400 people. So that's amazing. We appreciate that. We're hoping for some big news this week. Again, a big Mariners Braves trade just came out while we were recording this. So hopefully that's the precursor to what is a busy week. We expect the reports are Shohei Ohtani is going to sign at some point this week, potentially early in the week. If the reports were true that he had all of his team meetings this weekend. And then once that happens, I think it's going to be a free-for-all. I bet there's lots of stuff that's kind of 90% done that's just waiting on teams to decide if he comes here, if he doesn't come here. And so we'll see. So stay tuned to DodgerBlue.com. All the latest stuff up there, DodgerBlue1958 on social media. Of course, make sure you're following Matt at Matthew__ Moreno on Twitter. Also known as X. You can follow me at Jeff Spiegel. Not breaking news over here quite as much as Matt is, but trying to retweet breaking news as much as possible. So if you're new, subscribe, ring the notification bell here on YouTube. If you're a podcast person, you can find the DodgerHeads podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Google as well. So again, thanks for joining us here every Sunday night. We'll have some videos out this week as well. Enjoy the rest of your night, folks. And as always, go Dodgers.